Welcome to the Create and Grow podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. We are live. I love being live because it's just the real thing. Everyone really uses the word authenticity now, especially when they see our work, and so it's nothing more than being authentic than being live, right? And I am excited to talk to you about intercultural creativity, neurosomatic creativity, and prismatic leadership with our guests as we just really bring to you some of the top thought leaders around the world, actually, and definitely within the nation as we head into this future of work 2024. Our guest today is Miss Annie. And could you pronounce your last name? I just want to make
Meehan, but I feel like I should change my name because my nickname is Authentically Annie. So you did a brilliant job. Live is authentic, right?
Yes, that's perfect. And I had the pleasure of meeting Annie a few years ago as I joined a group called Innovation Women, a platform for women speakers who are looking really to get just really into the speaking business, get around other women who are doing the same thing. And Annie is a pineapple person. What does that mean? She will explain it later. It's so fun. And she's a lady with ADHD who was encouraged not to go to college due to bad spelling. But today she speaks all over the world, and she just finished her 8th book and won a second national award for her book. She has an amazing story. And those of you who have followed the podcast and you know my work is to bring to you top thought leaders and then to almost just break apart their journey and highlight the 7 gems, those of you who know the work, the 7 gems of intercultural creativity, of the cognitive skills of creative thinking and intercultural development within the story of the guests that we bring to the show. That's really what my job is. And I just love having fabulous people. I consider her as one of my mentors. I have learned from her so much. Annie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I love your message and mission as well. And I do, one of my many nicknames is Authentically Annie, and it is why I come live, because you're right. We might say the goofy thing or be messy or whatever, but we're real people trying to make a real difference in the world. So yes, thank you for having me with you.
We were actually supposed to have our live show last Monday on Martin Luther King Day, but I was in Denver, then flew from Michigan to Denver and almost got caught. There was a storm in the Northeast last week, and then I came home and my son had a fever, and just everything happened. Talk about authentic, trying to run a household, trying to raise a human, and still trying to build a business at the same time. And you have an amazing story. Can you just introduce yourself to our guests and let's just get into your story so we can really give some gems, right? Some gems for other people on how to level up and how to extricate these gems from their own story that they may not even be realizing that's there. So who are you, Annie?
Well, Janine is correct. I am an international speaker, kind of started my background speaking in the faith community, climbing the corporate ladder in the financial world, and then owning 2 franchise gyms. And so I have a very diverse background, but the one thing that's the same in everything that I do is it's all about people, right? It's about helping people, whether it was in the financial world or whether it's as a mom or a gym owner or a writer. Yes, I just finished my 8th book. I'm actually working on my 9th. Choose to Soar is my 8th book, inspired by the hurricane. I love using symbols, as Janine kind of mentioned, but I do speak all over the world. So I'm primarily a keynote speaker. I do some training, retreats, small groups, and one-on-one coaching as well. But really, I just like to use my words to bring hope and healing to the people that are hurting, professionally and personally.
Yes, I love that. And I love how you're almost like just branching out. Like there's this trunk of a core message, and then all these branches that go into so different areas of your books, your retreat, your coaching, your keynotes, and your training, right? You do corporate training as well.
That's
and all that. So let's backtrack, because you just didn't come out the womb just this fabulous person, right? I love when people just think of people as like overnight success, right? Like, oh wow, look, she's on the stage. But you weren't there when? Can you take us a few years back, or maybe a few decades back, or just like what did it look like at the beginning of your journey? Because I know there's a lot of people out there at different parts of their own journey, and that would love to learn.
That's right. Well, Janine started out with a big part of my messaging, but my messaging started way before being encouraged not to go to college due to my dyslexia and ADHD. But growing up the middle child of a single mom in a really dysfunctional family. So I had 6 siblings growing up, and I was the middle with a single mom, so grew up in extreme poverty, and my mother struggles with some mental health issues, undiagnosed and untreated, which makes a huge impact on your stability, your security. I moved 83 times by the time I was 18. So a lot of people say, oh, military, and I say, oh, no, mental illness. And so poverty and instability and insecurity has such an enormous impact on your core of who you are as a human, let alone your ability to learn, to grow, to create, to be a creator as an individual and as a business owner. And so that first 20 years of my life, kind of growing up and moving all the time, was very unstable. But I've always been a woman of faith, and I've always believed I was created for more. So it didn't always make sense. I wasn't always doing it, but I was always seeking and striving and learning and watching other people as they survived things, as they grew from things. And I wanted more out of life, but more than anything, I wanted to be a teacher. Ever since I was young, I wanted to be a mother and a teacher, but I was a young mother. That wasn't quite planned, but I really wanted to be of influence for good, not just an influencer, but what did I learn as I overcame, and how could I use that to help other people on their journey?
Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you for pausing, because then I jump in and I love that. The brain, right? Yes. Right. Everyone has one of these, and the neuroscience is huge on what's coming out within the past few years. So we're looking at something called ACEs, right? Adverse childhood experiences, and then there's also something I just learned, like ELA, which is not the school system term of English language arts, but it's just ELA. It's just like early adverse experiences as well, but it was just a new acronym that they use within the neuroscience field. And we're looking at how when you're young, sometimes the brain has to grow up too fast.
Yeah.
And they're saying that now, children need play, they need security, they need social connection, they need curiosity, or they have it, they need to be able to explore it. And they say when the child is in, the type of your situation, sometimes the base areas don't grow as much as they need to. And then your higher thinking skills kind of need to step up, because you need to protect yourself and to guard yourself. And so I just got into that research like last night. So I'm definitely not in a position to really go too much into that. But there's certain people where these high ACEs scores, like it just tears them down and they can't come back from it, right? And then you read these stories with people with high ACEs scores, advanced childhood abuse or just harsh experiences. But something happens where they're able to come back from it in a healthier way. And you mentioned something, you start to see people who were doing what you wanted to do. What in your earlier life kind of helped you move that energy to know you could climb out?
Yeah. It's kind of why my second book is called Be the Exception, because I meet people that say, what your childhood was doesn't equal where you are. What happened? What was the transition? Which was a hard thing for me to even figure out myself. But I think there's moments. I had to write about a hero, and I was like, I don't really have a hero. But what I thought about as I thought back to my childhood years, especially, is who for a moment lit my path. Who was a moment of positivity in the face of adversity and challenge and pain? And Mrs. Rico, my 3rd grade teacher, leaned over, because I really didn't know how to spell yet or read. And she said, you're good at math. And she also said, usually the poor kids are good at math because you count a penny when a penny counts. So I've always thought about that. Like, I'm good at math because it matters. But if you have lots of quarters and dollars around, you might take it for granted. But if you need every penny, then you count every penny, right? And so when I was 21, I applied for a job, and I had to count backwards from 93 by 7. And they talked about in the middle of the interview how your brain kind of freezes because you're having anxiety, and how 2 odd numbers can make you freeze. But I was the only one that did it accurately just because I knew the numbers. And Janine, as much as your brain and your wisdom can absorb the research and the study, like I don't know any of that. Like I don't study that. I have life experience personally and professionally as a coach and a speaker of stories people have told me and things I've learned hands-on and how I've been able to apply. But I don't always understand how or why it works. Like, why am I not an addict? And why do I have siblings that struggle with addiction or depression or whatever? And I don't know that I have an answer. What I think about is that I always believed bigger. I trusted God for bigger, and I was willing to do the work. So for this last decade, when people say, you got to work smarter, not harder, I always think in my head, I don't believe that. I believe we have to work hard and we have to work smart. It's not one or the other. I've worked really hard to get to where I was. I've also believed really big in a vision beyond myself and beyond my circumstances, and that I wanted to be different for my kids of where I came from. I wanted them to have a different experience that I did. But I also kind of feel like it's an ongoing, whether it's a battle or an ongoing intention of like, I have to get up every day and be like, how can I be more patient? What does it look like to stay married? What would I wish to have had as a nurturing parent that I can give? Even though my kids are adult now, I still think about that stuff. Like what do I wish I had and how can I give it not only to my own kids, but to other kids or employees or generational friends or family, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. John Locke said, innovation comes from sensation and reflection, right? We need to be aware of where our attention going and where our attention is going and what we're sensing. All of our faculties, sensing to the biggest or the fullest of their capabilities. But then we go through life and no one stops to reflect.
Right.
And what can I pull from that? And why did that person do that? Or did I really communicate well? Or what lesson can I get from that? And it seems like you almost had to learn how to reflect in order to keep growing. And that is a wonderful it's a cultural competency skill, but it's also a creative thinking skill. Right. Frederick Douglass said it the same way. He just talked about, you go through war. He was talking about actual battles and things like that. But the lessons are in the reflection on what happened throughout the battle. So you can metaphorically take that in any way. So now you're around 21. You had a rough childhood, moved a lot, which that, I just wonder how that kind of played out in just your ability to really connect with people. Because I've had past friendships where they just didn't have strong connections in their childhood, so it affected their ability to connect in their adulthood. But you're around 21. What's going on around there to how you got to now?
Well, this was really my big change from my childhood to my adulthood happened when I was 19. So I got pregnant. And I always say, I don't believe in encouraging unplanned pregnancy, but for me, it was a wake-up call to the person I wanted to be and the person I was becoming based on just repeating habits that I didn't really want to repeat. And so at 20, I had a baby and it was my wake-up. I was like, I want to give my child the life I always dreamed of, not the life I had. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I asked a lot of questions. I went to counseling. I told the therapist I want to be a perfect mom. And she said, that's not possible. I said, no, I'm going to be. She said, no, it's not fair to you or your kid because life isn't perfect. It's messy. So there was a lot of learning in that. Like I knew what was lacking and I knew what I wanted to give, but I didn't exactly know how to give it. And to not have immense expectations on myself or my child to be perfect was a learning curve. So at 21, I actually was pregnant again and I placed my daughter for adoption with my older sister. So by now I'm a single mom with 2 kids and it takes time. That's another thing is people do look at me and they go, you're so successful or your life's so amazing. And I was writing this book called Dumpster to Dynasty about growing up in a physical, financial, emotional dumpster in a hoarding house and today living dynasty that my doors are open and I have enough food and shelter for people. But one thing is so that book switched. So that was my second book. And the first book was more of an inspirational journal, but I was writing Dumpster to Dynasty and this writer helped me. And this is kind of my answer, Janine. I think of what I learned is when it goes back to your reflection is she said, don't write Dumpster to Dynasty. That's a memoir of your story and all you've journeyed to where you are. Instead, teach us. And I said, teach you what? And she said, what did you do? What did you do different than your siblings? What did you do different than other people in your circumstance? How did you become the exception? And so I had to literally sit for days and weeks and months and think about everything I believed about my life and ask myself, kind of, I thought of it as sifting. Is this true, or is it just a story I've repeated so much I think it's true? Like Annie's stupid. Annie's worthless. Annie will never amount to anyone. Think Annie will never have success. Annie doesn't know how to keep a relationship. All of that stuff. I had to figure out what were the 7 keys that I needed to apply to change that story to become who I am today. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yes. And that's, what I tell people when they're looking to write their story. I'm like, unless you're Oprah or like Tyra Banks or someone, people may not want to just hear your story, but they want to get the nuggets of learning from your story, so yeah, my book was From Debt to Destiny. Almost similar, right?
Yeah.
But I just didn't write about my story. I wrote about like, hey, here's what I learned, and here's how you can apply this, and here's the difference between a Roth IRA and our, and here's why you should think twice about buying a brand new car right off the lot if you're not financially stable, or even if you are. Just things that we are not taught from certain demographics, but we're storytellers. To have to be a great speaker, you have to be a good storyteller. You have to understand how the brain works, and the brain wraps itself around story. So to get good at that skill. And now that's leadership, right? You and I train leaders, and sometimes, C-suite and people who are running multi-million-dollar companies.
Yes.
And they're coming to us for the story. Like, how do I tell a good story? I know how to run data. I know how to do tech. I know how to fill out these TPS reports, but how do I inspire my group to dream bigger, right?
Yeah.
What are some tips that you can give leaders in that area of how you learn to tell your great story, and then what do you do in the C-suite training to advise other people to tell their great story?
That's right. I ask them what matters, and I always think about what lessons did you learn through the difficulties, and how do you want to teach them to other people? So I'm always like digging in. Questions, lots of questions. That's how I get to great stories. What would that look like? What would the organization feel like? What would be the success? What direction are we going? How do we get there? And I think that as a passionate leader myself, it is in the story, but it's in the lessons in the stories. And so I always ask myself, what's in it for them? So Dumpster to Dynasty became the 7 keys to being the exception. Be honest. Be careful about your thoughts and your words, what you're repeating. Some might say your narrative, but I just say your story about yourself and other people. So if I'm like, my coworkers are lazy, nobody ever does what I ask them to. I tell them this, and I say, and stop telling them. Let's ask them what's working for them, what's not working for them. And then let's give them some strategies on what is working. So that's really about the listening, the right questions. And especially in a leadership role, people are always watching you. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to influence, right? And then what are you going to do to get to that? So I use the 7 keys, we use strategies, but more than anything, questioning and lots of good listening. How do you intentionally listen so the person you're speaking with knows you're listening?
Yes, that's so good. So we have something called neural somatic creativity, and it's really looking at how the brain connects with the mind, because the brain and mind are different. Of course, they're connected, but they are two different. The mind encompasses so much more, right, than just the physical aspect of the brain. But the brain, the mind, the body, somatic, that's what some somatic means, comes from the, I believe, Greek or Latin, soma, and creativity. So how is the brain, mind, body, and how does it affect our creative thinking? And with that, we use the arts. We're really big on the arts. So have you ever thought about using music to strengthen someone's listening skills for leadership? Because a great musician, right? Someone who really knows how to listen to the bass line, like you're ignoring the melody, listen to the bass line, switch to the rhythm, or switch to the melody, okay, switch to the second part of the melody. Great musicians know how to shift their attention, right, to the different data points. And so we're looking into the research, and we're doing our training on how do we use the arts to strengthen leadership skills, right? What does that look like? Because listening, like you said, is key. And there's so much more, right? There's so many levels to great listening. What does that look like? And you also said, how do you become a remembrant? How do you become a remembered source? You can speak something and people automatically remember like a gem from what you said. You have this quote called "Be a pineapple,"
Yeah.
or why you're asking people to be a fruit
Be a pineapple
from the
person. Be a pineapple.
yes. What does that mean, please?
I love to, Janine. I think I like when people say leaders are learners rather than leaders are readers. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with reading, and there's times I read, but there's lots of ways to learn, and whether it's listening or watching. And for me, my brain, I am such a visual learner. So if you can give me a symbol related to your message, like a diamond, I will remember. So a pineapple person, I was like, someone called me it, then they taught me a poem. But I was like, it's so visual. It looks like what I'm trying to teach. So a pineapple is stand up straight, and pineapples are up straight. Wear a crown. Well, they have a crown on the top. Be sweet on the inside. A pineapple is sweet on the inside. But really what it's about is not just a cute message. It's about the value of when I'm looking down at my phone and talking to you, give me a minute, I'll get to you. I've lost the value of seeing you, Janine, and I want to see people. So when we stand up straight, we see people and they feel valued. When we wear a crown, we do what's good to take care of ourselves, whether we feel like it or not, because we remember we're valued. But then if I know I'm valued, you know you're valued. Janine's wearing a crown, my audience wearing a crown, that they have value too. And if I'm sweet on the inside, kindness, encouragement, and love comes through my mouth, through my keyboard, through my voice. And so being a pineapple is a symbol of how we treat one another with kindness and encouragement.
See, I love it. It's a symbol and it's a metaphor, right? And the brain connects to metaphor. Some of the best lessons we've learned through, analogy, metaphor, allegory, just things along those lines. And so, as you mentioned, my metaphor that I'm so happy I grabbed is the diamond. But I've seen pineapple stickers and I've sent them to you in the mail just because
I think I have some still somewhere here. I don't know where, but yes.
Or a pineapple pen. I was like, and I just mail you pineapples.
People think of you, right? With the message, the diamond, the pineapple. Yeah.
It works. And as speakers, we're one of my dreams is to have an event with you, but it's like a speaker boot camp or doing something like that. But that's one of the things that I tell young speakers, because there's a lot of people looking at us, saying, okay, I see you on the stage. I see you in front of hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. And for me, and knowing your background, but for me, like, I know you stuttered. I know you were in speech therapy. I know you were very shy and quiet in, grade school.
Yeah.
Where did this come from? People, especially people who saw the journey. And what's some advice that you can give to people who are looking to start their speaking career or just get their voice out there and get their message?
Yeah. I think probably the first thing, right, is join Innovation Women, where we gather once a week and encourage one another, right? I think also know your story. So I coach people on becoming professional speakers, and I always think, know your story and know why it matters. So people might say, I have a good story. Well, that's great. But as Janine and I both teach about our own adversity and stories, what we're really teaching about is where we found our voice, what we were passionate about, and why we go out and share it with the world, right? Whether we share that individually one-on-one or a small group or coaching or to a larger audience, we have something that we have seen progression in our life, maybe going from a stutter, going from a dumpster, whatever it is, into this being an influencer. So as a professional speaker, I say, join Innovation Women, check out National Speakers Association if you need to learn the business, go to Toastmasters if you want to practice and gain confidence. But for me, I've spent a lot of money and time with coaches. It is good to get a coach that's been in the business. It's good to go through the academy. Certainly ask Janine and I questions and we'll encourage you. I always say it's great to have a story, but then as Janine and I both have mentioned today, it's the story, but it's the lessons we learn in the story and how it applies to our listener, not just to us. So when people have a great story, I'm like, nobody cares. And they're like, come on, I got to really, and I'm like, what does your story have to tell your listener? That's why people pay me money. Public speaker, people will listen to your story. Professional speaker, people pay me to teach them the wisdom that I've learned through owning multiple businesses, through becoming a speaker, through climbing the corporate ladder, through being a woman who's raised kids, been married 30 years, all of the different areas of my life. People come to me, can you teach about this? Can you teach about, I'm speaking on diversity next month because people ask me, what do you know about diversity? And one of my big things that I keep trying to remind people is if you don't like you, why would anyone else? I find is there's a lot of lonely people in this world that don't like themselves, because if you like you and I don't, it matters less. There's always going to be people that don't like you. And there's always going to be people that don't like me. But when I like me, I can keep moving on. They're not for me. I'm going. I'm going. People have been betting against me my whole life. It gives me fuel. She'll never make it. She didn't go to college. She'll never make it. She's not tall enough. She's not successful enough. She's poor. She's a single mom. And as long as I wear those labels, it keeps me down. But when I shake them off, I'm moving on. So if you want to be a speaker and you got a good story with a good message that can help a person, then figure out a way to get it done. And Janine and I are great resources to encourage you on that journey. And I know she shared some other ideas as well. But, you know, I've done a lot of things to get my speaking career to where it is right now. But as my lovingly husband often says, there's 3 reasons you speak. Some people speak to make money. Some people speak because you get to stand at the front of the room and tell people what to do and you're a powerful influence. And some people speak because they want to make a difference in the world. But honey, you speak because you want to make a difference in the world. You want to make a difference in the world, and you want to make a difference in the world. And that's okay. Along the way, you make some money, you make some influence, but that's not why we do it. We do it because we want people to shine bright like diamonds, right? We want people to live like pineapples and be kind to one another. There's a lot of people hurting, and my words and my work is very important to me. And it is an honor to take the platform and speak life into people that are wanting more out of their life, whether that's in their career, in their company, in their speech, or as an individual human being. So, yeah.
Yes. And that's, you know, as we start this year off in 2024, wanting more out of their life. You know, I've had one of my good friends during college who passed away at 42. And then my husband, his best man passed away at 38 from a brain issue that came on suddenly. And, you know, the older I get, the more you become aware that life, 100 years on this earth is not a long time, you know, especially in the history of the world. You know, I know, you know, the ancient script, you know, of a vapor, right? It's a breath, it's a vapor. And once you start seeing people, you know, and especially people you love leave the earth, you're like, oh, whoa. You know, you really don't know, you know, I'm in my 40s, even though, you know,
one time.
but, you know, I'm just like, if I'm going to live to be the average age of my grandmother, I've lived over half of my life. You know, their average age is about 80 years old. So I'm over that mark. And so I, you know, just my thing is I'm coming from a place of faith as well. So I love God and love people and create. And that's really a lot of what my work is about, is how do we get people to their creative identity. So you're on your 8th book. Was that first book just hard to birth? And then the other ones, you know, kind of like a natural birth. Sometimes people have, sometimes I know this is a very sensitive subject for some, but some people who have struggled, they struggle with the first one. And then I've heard stories and like the next 4 came very, very easily for some folks. Is that the way that book writing came for you? That first one was kind of hard to get out and then the rest just flew?
I wish I could say they flew out. The first one, people just kept saying, the more I spoke, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And I was like, I don't know how to spell. I don't know how to write a book. I can't do this. Oh my gosh. I was just so overwhelmed. Hey, Amy, how are you? I was just totally overwhelmed by the thought of writing a book. So I worked with a handful of people and they said, if you're not ready to write a book, write an inspirational journal. So my first one, which you actually made me think of the other day, is a minute ago, is an inspirational journal. So one page is doodle and it kind of gives you something to draw. And then the next page is Annie wonders, and it's a question or it's a quote or it's a thought. So that book was pretty easy because I just put together 150 questions and some doodling pages. But it was my second book, Be the Exception, the one that ended up winning a national award, that I was overwhelmed with the thought. I had been actually writing on and off for about 40 years, more journal entries or short stories or whatever. And so I hired a partner publishing company, Wise Inc. out of Minneapolis. And that's who I said, I want to write Dumpster to Dynasty. And we met and she said, don't write that. Teach us. What are the 7 keys that we could live by? And whatever adversity we go through, from a divorce to a layoff, to a bankruptcy, to diagnosis, how do we become the exception through it? And so Wise Inc. partnered with me and we started working together in September and kind of set out a timeline. Let's meet once a month in face-to-face, and let's email every Monday what you want me to work on, what stories to add to or take away from. And I wanted by March 1st of 20 16 to have a book. And so I did. I hired them in September, and I had been writing for a while and speaking a lot. So I had a good following of people that wanted my work and were like, tell me more about that story. But it's a lot of work. It is like giving birth. I mean, it's like 9 months of pain and molding and massaging and writing and critiquing to get there. But yes, it definitely gets easier. I cannot say books are easy for me at all still, but I have a passion to write. And I feel like when you can't afford to hire a great speaker, sometimes just reading their book is exactly the message or encouraging you need in that moment. And you can do it very affordably on your own. So
that's good. Yeah, I never thought about that. Because do you ever think, now I did the calculations, like over 5,000 of my books are literally around the world, because I've sent them to Europe, and I think, some people have downloaded them just on almost every continent. And it's almost just like your thoughts are out there. You're at home washing dishes, and someone in France is laughing at something you wrote, or is going, oh, wow, or is sitting down, crying over their experience that your book invoked. Like, how does that make you feel?
It's so humbling. Like, it is so powerful. When I think about, when I get letters a lot from people about how they read my work, how it impacted them, or the reviews are such a great compliment to us and also help get our word out. But it's brilliant. And also to be a person that thought I was stupid. I mean, even at 21, I was like, I shouldn't go to college. I can't read very well. I can't write at all. And even sometimes I don't give myself credit for how much I've done. And I had 3 friends in the last month be like, you're doing amazing stuff. Do you know that? Do you know people? And I'm like, I don't know. I got to work on what's next. And I'm going back to college. I just started in January. I'm always doing these things that I sometimes forget to slow down and celebrate the impact. Yeah. But it is a humbling honor to have people read your work all over the world and to put themselves in your story and to feel inspired and motivated to go after their dream of speaking or running a company or whatever. It's humbling and it's rewarding and it's powerful. Like, exactly. That's why it's also important. I do believe in writing a book, but you do have to be careful what you write, because once it's out there, and it's always out there. And I can take it and I can pass it on to someone else and someone else, which is a beautiful thing. But you don't rush so much that you're not proud of the work that you do and that you can't stand behind and know what you wrote and believe in it and feel it, because it's kind of a gift of yourself to the world all over the world, right? Once it's released.
Yes. And the hard part is we are always evolving, like Janine from 2019, when I was first writing my first piece of work, is different, definitely different than not different, but I know a lot more, I'm deeper into the neuroscience and just aware of other systems that I wasn't as entrenched in before. But I want to get a little bit back to something I call creative abuse. Right? There's so many people that are coming into their adulthood that are dealing with creative abuse. Maybe someone said something kind of like in your situation, oh, your ideas are stupid, or you didn't do well in school. So they're like, why even try? Just get a basic job and be happy to pay your bills. Don't do too much. Yeah. And it's stifling our ability. Sometimes I think systems, educate us out of our creative potential. And then you have definitely attacks, either peers or even a teacher. I've heard one too many stories of someone in a position of authority, like a teacher or a coach, just say something that just pummeled the creative identity and potential of a young developing child. And then you meet this child as a 35-year-old who has done nothing in the past 25 years because of that one incident in the 7th grade. How did you overcome your creative abuse and have to almost break down and then rebuild that up?
I love that. It's such an important question. And I've never heard it used as creative abuse. But it is it's kind of like quiet your spirit, quiet your soul. There's too much of you. You talk too much. You dream too big. I still have people doing it to me all the time, Janine, honestly. Like going back to college, a lot of people have said to me, what are you doing? Who do you think you are? Why? You don't have time for that. Somebody told me just last week, I can't believe people hire you to get continuing education when you only have a GED. Wow, thank you. I think, and that's maybe not as creative, but it's that expression of me, right? It's that expression of my ability. It's that I've been told so many times, though I have a couple of friends now who have said, "Don't sing. Are you tone deaf?" Don't. I sing so loud, Janine. You cannot stop me from singing. I do not care if you do not love it. It is my joy. I dance like a wild woman, flailing all over. I don't care. Don't make me stop singing and dancing, because that is my creative expression of who I am. And part of who I am, a big part of who I am, is silly and quirky and goofy and sarcastic sometimes, but playful and childlike. And I can also be serious and brilliant when I need to be, but don't crush my spirit. Let me dream big. Let me be big. So it hurts my heart. And yet I know it's so true. And I've heard people say that kid needs to do that. I almost feel it more with boys than girls. I'm not saying it doesn't happen with both, but that kid needs to sit still. So I lost my brother to suicide. And he was, kind of identified as a naughty kid, as a little boy, but he was playful and he was energetic, but he didn't fit in the box. And then we discount people that don't fit in our box, what we decide they should look like. And I do think we all have creative ability. Like I used to always say, and I teach about creativity a teeny bit, very little, but how are you on your creativity? And I always thought that was coloring and painting. And I'm like, it's part of it, but there's a million ways we can be a creative. And one of my creative expressions is I'm not a big TV watcher, but I love Shark Tank. I love Shark Tank because it's like, if it's good, how do we make it great? If we've never heard of it, how do we invent it? And even how they mentor, sometimes harshly, but mentor these people with big vision. Like it's great to be creative and have a vision and have a message about making a difference, but how do we monetize that, right? So they teach them. But I love that show because my brain, no matter what I'm doing, which is hard to be married to me, is what else? How can we make it better? Like good is good, but how can we make it great? Great is great.
It's hard to be married to me too. I'm just,
right?
Shane's like, let's reel it in a little bit. but we balance each other out.
Yes, exactly. Like for New Year's Eve, I like to reflect on the last year and look forward. And I told my husband, let's come up with 100 ideas of date nights, but none can involve food or drinking. They have to be creative. And he's like, why can't you be a normal wife? And like, can we have 10? Like, why do you need 100? We have 52 up on our fridge. Like, I'm so happy that we together, mostly me, but we talked it out. Like, I want to be creative. I want to live this brief vaping moment, disappearing moment with all of me. I want everyone that encounters me to feel loved and inspired and encouraged. And my husband, we just lost 2 friends since the beginning of the year. And my husband lost his best friend at 38. And I've lost my best friend, my brother, my sister now, and so young. So we can't assume we get to live to 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or 100. We don't know. We get this. So in this, can I even creatively express love for another human being? That maybe it doesn't make sense, but can we creatively just fully embrace and love people with, I like to say, a Dove love a day keeps the doctor away. Pass out those Dove loves, give people a love note, creatively remind people they're loved, they're valued, they're appreciated. So yes, it breaks my heart. How do you heal? What was your question? How do you heal?
Well, let's pause there, because that was good. We're so quick to give criticism. If someone serves us wrong or serves us the wrong meal or something's burnt, or the cashier gave us the wrong change, and who's your boss, and let me speak to your manager. But when something goes right, we hold it to ourselves. You brought, and I just want to challenge people out there this week. Give 3 compliments to someone you don't know, whether it's verbal, whether you write a note to the person's manager, or even the C-suite, the CEO. We're so quick to tell people when things are going wrong, but then we hold on to the things are going right. And just like you said, someone may need to hear it at that time.
That's right.
Especially if they're maybe in a job that's not outwardly fulfilling. I one time was in Florida, where you live, right?
Yes.
There's like a billion toll booths, right? And I remember Seth Godin used to say, like the worst job, I think he said like a bank teller, but to me it was like a toll booth. I do not want to be in a booth collecting money for eight hours. Like to me, that was like, on a freeway. That was to me like the epitome, like I have hit rock bottom. I'm working in a toll booth. And then I'm going to meet my sister who was living in Orlando, and I go past this toll booth. And this man looked like he was working at Disneyland, just the most joyful man. Good morning. And he took the money and gave the change. And he just like the level of joy on this man's face. And I was like, wow, he's meant to be here. He took this job and took it to a whole new level. I don't know if he's meant to be here for his whole career, but for right there, then he is working it to the fullest. And the amount of joy, what he's able to give people, and even the 10 seconds of transaction was mind blowing. I totally revamped that bias that I had, or that stereotype, because that showed me also the words of Martin Luther King, or Beethoven, one or the other. I think it was MLK. He said, no matter what you do, even if you're a street sweeper, do it to the best of your ability. Have joy. Understand the bigger picture, right? The story of the person sweeping NASA, saying, yeah, I'm not just sweeping the halls. I'm sending a man to the moon and a woman to the moon. I'm sending astronauts to the moon by sweeping this hall to make sure people get to where they need to get without slipping and falling. So everyone at every level saw the bigger purpose of being there. And this man, I don't know who this man was. I wish I would have got his name. But I challenge our listeners today, find 3 experiences that you can just bring joy and appreciation and encouragement to someone who's not even expecting. And if you can add a monetary tip, even better. Or just you're beautiful. Thank you so much. Just these words mean so much, So,
and I think you said something important there, Janine, is when people are complaining about their job, sometimes I ask them, when was the last time you went into your boss's office and just said, thank you so much for the opportunity to work here? And a lot of people look back like that, and I'm like, leaders need to be appreciated too. Yes, we should appreciate our staff, but go thank your boss. Sometimes it's the top level that's the biggest complaint department and the least appreciation. So I wanted to say that. I always try to encourage people, thank your boss for their paycheck. Thank your boss for the job opportunity to work there, to love them. That's a great gift, and it can go both ways. But one quick story, I take my kids, I always visited colleges with them. So with my youngest son, I was visiting, and we had the most amazing service at a restaurant. So as we were getting done eating, we had warm biscuits, and the bus person was great. The hostess was great. The waitress was great. The bartender was great. And as we were leaving, there was about a 15-year-old hostess, maybe 17, I don't know. And I said, can I see your boss? And she said, sure, no problem. And you could just see her body kind of shutting down. She was right. And the boss came out, and he's kind of, hello, I understand you asked to see me. And I said, oh, I did. And he said, I'm sorry. I hope everything was okay. And I said, oh, it wasn't. And he said, oh, I'm so. And I said, no, it was better than okay. You have an exceptional staff. They were amazing. The service was delicious. There was extra ice in my water. There was warm biscuits. The dinner was served delicious. Your staff was smiling. Everyone from the moment we walked in the door till we walked out was exceptional. And this man, his posture changed. He lit up. And I was thinking, how often? Stopped to say how great it was. So I watched his face light up. And behind him stood the hostess, this young teenage girl. And she heard when I recognized her as well, and she lit up. But behind her was my son, who watched that his mother, on a busy, tired night of driving and visiting colleges, stopped what I was doing for just a couple moments. And I didn't do it. I did it sincerely to appreciate. But all of these people are impacted by a positive. We are so quick. It's such a great reminder to complain. My latte is not warm enough.
I know.
Like, who are we? We're so entitled, right? Like, just be nice. So anyway, yes, thank you for that.
I tell my son, you don't know how blessed you are,
Right.
And that's why we have, and that's the thing is parents and caretakers and mentors and teachers, they're watching more what we do more than what we say.
100%.
That is cool. Are very critical. Another thing that I want to bring up is you said the comment of someone, saying to you, Annie, like, who are you to be giving advice about this? You barely have your GED. And we need to, as a nation, discuss what the term means to be educated. right? So we have, and this is a evolution that I had to go through, because I was raised, and my mother, through no fault of her own, she was raised in a generation where you go to college. Like for us, we were chanting, go to junior high, high school, go to college. Like it was not an option, right? Just like going to eighth grade is, I wonder if I'll go to eighth grade next year. No, it's you go, right? So college was not an option. It was just what we did because my mother, in her generation, if you had a college degree, especially being a woman, and especially a woman of color, like it just opened way more doors than just having a high school diploma. And then my generation, where I born the millennials, or what am I? I don't even know what I am. I was born in like 1979, 80, because I'm right on the cusp, right? I think Gen Y or something. And so my generation got caught in the college prices are skyrocketing all of a sudden. And then now we're getting out of college with 50, 100,000 K in debt, right? And then I'm in elementary ed, making 40K a year, right? You're like, wait,
you're lucky, right?
Yeah. If you're back south, you're pulling in what, 28, 30, 35.
Exactly.
And so I do believe in so my quote is, college isn't for everyone, but higher ed is.
Absolutely.
And so we have stigmatized other routes of higher education. And, there's all these high schools, and I write about it in my book, shameless plug, that we've stigmatized just, you're basically a failure if you don't go into a 4-year university, when there are so many other routes. There's trade school, entrepreneurship with business classes underneath it. There's the 2-year university, there's mentorship, there's apprenticeship, there's so many ways to get education. And now it's starting to bite us in the heel, because corporate needs, the World Economic Forum put creativity, and problem solving at the top of their list. Corporate needs agile thinkers.
That's right.
And so they need people from different lived experiences to come together, right? And so what's I'm saying, the learning needs to be there after high school, but the learning tracks may look different. And so we need to unstigmatize alternate routes of learning. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, 100%. And actually, Janine, it's been interesting. Some of my clients lately have told me they are removing the bachelor's degree as a requirement for entry, because they're like, really what we're looking for is quick learners, loyal people that'll stay at the company, not just I got a degree, so I want to be paid a ton of money and I don't have any work experience. They want the work experience. I'm such a believer in lifelong learning. I'm such a lifelong learner.
You have to be now.
Yeah. And I'm humbled and honored to have done college commencements and high school commencements. But I do, like my oldest son and I were talking this week, and he was talking to a machinist, and he was saying, we're not requiring any training now. We're doing the hands-on training. And he's saying, I want to do that, but he didn't finish college. So then he's concerned. And what my middle child went to school for, they're not working in that industry. And what my youngest went to school for, they are working in that industry. So there's always, but I think it's instead of, and kind of in our house was a lot of chanting, you will go, and which college will you go to? And which college will you go to? If not, will you go to college, right? And I'm like, that's not the track for everybody. And it's not bad. Always we should be learning through watching, through going to courses, through hands-on development, through expanding our mind. But I think that it's so important to not pigeonhole. And I think what we've really done that has hurt our economy and world is we have minimized the trades and saying, no, 4-year degrees above them. And now we have all these trades that are desperate, machine shops and engineers or electricians and plumbers and construction that needs desperately people. And we minimize, you have to get a 4-year degree. Not everybody's meant to sit at a desk, especially those of us that are very creative. We need movement. We need different spaces, different people. And so as a creative person, there's a lot of different styles of learning. And gratefully, the higher education is catching up with that and saying, okay, how do you learn? Is it hands-on? Is it online? Is it in person? Is it a mixture of all those things? But I think you can be a lifelong learner in lots of ways, whether it's watching or participating or listening or reading or writing or group conversations. I'm such a hands-on learner, and I am a quick learner, which has helped me get this far in life. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think it's important to listen to our children and to not put them in a box of they have to go on this linear trial. but instead to ask them. I wish if I had it to do over, especially with my oldest, I probably would have said, he was very young for his age, let's not go to college. Let us support you in staying home and working, or in let's check out some trades. Let's figure out, you're hands-on. You're not a sit in a classroom and do your homework person. You can, but it's not what you love. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to learn and grow.
And that's the whole premise behind prismatic leadership. Like, are we watching our team members, for our leaders, but for parents and caretakers, our kids, for the hidden colors within them, right? Because you know, when you walk out into the sunlight, you're surrounded by rainbows. You just can't see it because you don't have a prism. The prism is actually what separates the different frequencies of light, so you can see the colors of the rainbow, right? So great prismatic leaders can see these hidden skills and gifts in their team members and in their students and children that they can't even see themselves. So, you know, and they're sensitive to it. And so even with my son, is like, okay, he needs to move. He's listening, right? I'm reading a story about plants or the parts of a plant or something. So he's listening to me. He just has to fiddle with something. And we now know, the neuroscience is showing us that doodling, I love that your book has doodling. I'm looking to do a creativity book with like pages to doodle and pages to just be artistic creativity, but also other types of creativity as well. But you know, the brain needs to doodle at times. So for us who got in trouble for daydreaming is when your default mode network turns on in your brain and your subconscious is combining different ideas, like the things that you and I got in trouble for.
Yes.
30 years ago.
Exactly. That's what we're doing.
Now the neuroscience is saying, oh, wait, sorry, you know, and even language, you know, America, we said English only. If you speak another language, do not speak another language. English only. English. Now we're like, oops, sorry. Bilingual and trilingual brains actually have more gray matter. You're actually able to be more creative because your brain can see things in different ways, because language affects the way you perceive.
Yes.
Music. Hey, Sir Ken Robinson said it in his TED Talk. You're not going to be a musician, so why study music in the 4th grade? You're not going to be an artist, so why do art in the 7th grade? Oops, are bad. The arts better connect the brain for your connectome. So even if you're not going to be a professional in the arts, being exposed to the arts as early as negative day 1, even before you're born, right? My son started his musical training at negative 5 months gestation period, just because I happen to be a music teacher, so he didn't really have a choice. He just heard me singing for 6 hours a day, right? But what that did to his brain during the fastest rate of development, which is in utero, I'm now trying to push this research out. Like, if we're trying to build strong brains, build the brain capital of these human beings, we got to get it together. We got to get the arts in their lives as soon as possible. We have to get the social connection, celebrate the way that they interact with content, right? Whether it's hands-on or whatever, we all do it, all of it. And we have to make sure they have language, all types of language. Let them sing in Japanese. You learn Japanese too. Why don't you?
Right. And doing it young, like when our brain, not that we can't do it now, but when we're younger, learning different languages. One of our kids went to a Spanish immersion, one went to a Chinese immersion. And I loved that. Like, they could just get it. I was slower to get it. I also love, you said something, Janine, that's so important. And I feel like somebody needs to hear it. So I just want to say it again, what you said about your son. Walking and moving as you're reading. And my boy, when he was in 3rd or 4th grade, he was waving at kids in the hall and doing whatever he was doing. And he's good at math, but she called him out, and she goes, the teacher said, I called him out, like, Matthew, what's the answer? Thinking I was just trying to pull him back in, but he knew the answer. Because even though he's waving and distracted, he could still do that. And I think we crush people's spirits when we tell them they've got to learn like we learn, because that's not true. We all learn differently. And I always say, I don't have a learning disability. I might have dyslexia and ADHD, but I have a learning difference. And you, Janine, like, reminding people, don't shut down that creative. Don't shut down, because I learn differently, because I can be waving and walking around the room and listening to music and still hear what you're saying, right? And so I love that, for reminding your listeners, we got to quit crushing the spirit of the creative and the innovative, especially of our young people, but of each other, that we all learn different, right? So
yeah, we have to, instead of crushing the spirit, encourage the spirit to be authentic. Going back to the first word we started the whole show with, authenticity. See what we did there? Just close that loop. So we are going to close, just because we need to get back to changing the world. As you know, your logo, you have several logos, but now your first one I met you on with is the pineapple, but my logo is the diamond, because we're all meant to shine bright. We are multifaceted, prismatic leaders, and so many connections there. But we ask our guests to end with the gem that you want to bless our audience with. What would that gem be?
Kindness costs nothing.
Mm.
Kindness costs nothing. And I mean the random acts of kindness. Get up every morning and ask yourself, who can I love? Life is short and it is precious. Kindness costs nothing. So go spread love through social media, through an intentional hug with your family that sometimes gets the leftovers, with your coworkers, with your boss, with your employees, with your kiddos, with your neighbors. Spread love. Kindness costs nothing.
Wonderful. So thank you so very much. If people wanted to get in contact with you and your kindness, we know you cost something, but, but kindness costs nothing. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn's the best place to connect with me. I'm pretty active on there, just trying to spread encouragement and kindness every day. And of course, lots of different places, but Annie Meehan. And I have lots of videos on YouTube too. So if you need an ounce of encouragement or kindness poured into you, check out my YouTube videos where I spread a little kindness.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much. I am going to see if I could share this screen really quick before we
thank you for having me.
come by. Yes, and thank you for being here. I just wanted to just make sure
That's
people.
your emails.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Birthday party surprise. I don't know if you want
to. Yes. No, I'm trying to get to the book. Anyway, I'll just talk about it. We are having our book launch of the Power of I Am, March 16th in the Los Angeles area. So if you're in the Los Angeles area, the San Fernando area, on March 16th, at 12 o'clock, we are having our book launch. We are having speakers, dancers, singers talking about our inner child book, aka children's book, I Am, and just the funds will be benefiting the new homeless center and just supporting the creative compassion and looking to do that. So if you're in Los Angeles area, March 16th, connect with me there to be there and to really just see how we're moving this conversation of creative thinking forward. Thank you, Miss Annie Meehan, for being with us. Thank you for your
I gotta ask you one question. I know we're done and I'm supposed to say, but how close is your book launch to Irvine?
Oh, we are about, we're Irvine, what, 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half without traffic. It could be
really?
2 hours.
Oh, okay, because my brother lives there and I'm trying to figure out how to go there in March. So I would love to come celebrate your book launch.
Well, if you're there, we'll have to have you say something. But yes. So we're just so happy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your gems, and to my audience, thank you for listening. Thank you for our live listeners as well. Amy, we saw you there, and Mike, thanks so much for tuning in. And don't forget to shine bright like a diamond. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.